Brad is a graduate of our Illinois Gamma chapter at Monmouth College out in Illinois. He then attended law school at the University of Illinois and has been a practicing attorney since then. He went on to found his own his own firm. A lot of names: Leip, Lyons, Murphy, Nahrstadt, and Ponticus. Brad's laughing because I probably got the name wrong, but
you got it exactly right.
So he did that for a good part of his career, being an equity partner there, and just recently, in the last year, made the move to become chief operating officer at Donohue, Brown, Mathewson, and Smyth. This is a move that Brad made to really challenge himself and take on this role where he oversees the operations of this law firm. And that's why he's here talking to you, because the vice president of programming is very similar to the COO of your executive board. Brad has two sons, a wonderful wife, and some bulldogs that he lives with. He loves his bulldogs, and probably will tell you that much. He lives just outside of Chicago, and in addition to all of that, Brad is a member of the National Board of Directors for SIGEP. He's been a committed SIGEP volunteer for a long time, serving in a local level as a district governor for the state of Illinois, and now, as I said, a national director on our national board. So Brad has incredible leadership experience, both in the legal practice as well as in SIGEP, and he's excited to share with you some insights about what it means to be a chief operating officer and a leader in your chapter. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Brad. He'll share some info with you, and then you'll get the opportunity to ask questions of him. Brad?
Ben, thank you very much. Wonderful introduction. And I appreciate the kind words that you said. So let me just tell you, everyone who's gathered here on the call tonight. I think Ben was absolutely right when he said the VP of programming is essentially the chief operating officer of the chapter. Right, you're the president's right hand man, responsible for making sure that the programming is complete, that activities are getting done, that people are accomplishing their tasks. I know if there's an issue, if there's a standards board trial and the president is unable to participate for some reason, VP of programming is supposed to take the president's spot. So it's an important position. It's and really the position I think that's most responsible or closest to being a chief operating officer. And let me just tell you a little bit about what that means for me in my day-to-day world. As Ben noted, I was a practicing lawyer. I do not practice anymore. I retired from the practice of law in December of 2019. And I decided I had to do something. Actually, my wife decided I had to do something. I wasn't allowed to just retire. So I was looking around for something else to do. And I happened to run into somebody who was one of the owners of Donohue, Brown, Mathewson, and Smyth, a guy that I used to work with when I first started practicing law almost 30 years ago. And I told him that I was going to retire from the practice of law. And he said, would you be interested in coming to be our chief operating officer? And I said, well, if your chief operating officer also practices law, no, because I'm doing that now. He said, no, you'd just be responsible for running our firm. So I met with the folks over there at Donohue Brown. I knew the firm by reputation, good firm in the city, firm of trial lawyers. They try a lot of cases, which is what I did. And I really thought after I met with them that I probably had the skill set to be an effective COO for them. And I have been doing that since January of 2020. Did not really think that when I took that job that 2 months into it, there'd be a global pandemic and I would have to go from from running a law firm in downtown Chicago to running a law firm from the second bedroom in my house. But it was an interesting experience to really prove to me that I could do things on the fly, because I had to come up with COVID protocols and work from home protocols and all these other things that were foreign to me. So it has been an interesting experience. And when Ben asked if I would talk to you guys, he said, you could talk to them about what you want to talk to them about. And I thought it might be a good idea if I shared with you some of the what I think are important attributes for a chief operating officer to have. What are the things that a chief operating officer, or in your case, VP of programming, who really is the chapter's chief operating officer, what do they need to keep in mind as they're performing their job, as they're approaching their job? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time telling you what I think are the important attributes of being an effective COO. And I'll try and give you some examples from real world examples of things that I've done as a COO. And I should mention, before I took this job as the chief operating officer of Donohue Brown, I was essentially the chief operating officer of the law firm that I founded. So I have been a chief operating officer for almost a decade. The prior experience was also as a practicing lawyer, so I was doing both. Now I'm just focusing on being a chief operating officer. So here's the first thing. I think as the chief operating officer, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty, right? And that's another way of saying, don't ask someone else to do something you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. And I think that that's a big part of leadership in any position, but I think it's particularly important if you're the chief operating officer, right? Part of your title, I know you don't technically have the title chief operating officer, but I'm going to say that's what you guys are. One of the parts of that is operating, right? You are operating the entity. So that means you have to get involved. You have to roll your sleeves up and actually get involved. It's not enough to delegate. You should delegate. I'm not saying, by the way, don't hear me say you should do everything, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to be willing to do anything you would ask somebody else to do. You need to set aside time to encourage your members. If you've been to Ruck, if you know anything about the Ruck curriculum, if you've read the leadership continuum philosophy that forms the basis of Ruck, you know one of the key tenets is to encourage the heart. It's the quickest way to get people to get things done. And I'll give you a good example of what I mean by that. When I was starting my own firm, there were 5 attorneys and 3 staff members who had left the firm that we were at and were going to start this new firm. And we were opening our doors on May 16th of 2012. And on May 15th, I sat up a good part of the night and wrote a personal handwritten note to every person who was starting that firm with me. The other partners, all of the staff members, the different wording. I didn't just, copy 9 notes. It was a personalized note to each person individually at the start of that endeavor. And I did it because, and basically my message to them was, I think that this could be successful, but it isn't going to be successful if we don't all work together. And I said it in different ways and used language. I knew all these people, so I used language that was specific to them. And at the time that I left in December of 2019, when I went around to say goodbye to everybody, every single person who had started the firm still had that note pinned up on their bulletin board. Right? That's what I mean. And we don't do that enough. We don't take the time to encourage people to make them really feel like they're part of the experience and we value what it is that they're contributing. And so I want to encourage you guys to make sure that you do that. And you should be part and parcel with that is being a coach. right? You should attempt to guide your team to be more productive, to be more strategic, right? So instead of saying you need to get this done by this date, ask them, what do you think you need? What can I provide you? What help can we get you so that we can reach this goal or get this task accomplished by this time, right? So it's more of help, giving them, coaching them, giving them the encouragement to get what they need done, and not simply saying, do it by this date and then hands off, it's their responsibility, right? Make sure that you put the organization first. I think that's your main job as the chief operating officer. It's not about you, it's about the organization. So what do you need to do to put the organization first? Every day, when I think about what I need to do for the day, I think about what can I do to make Donohue Brown a better place to work, a better place to service clients, a better place to deliver the services that we deliver. And that's always first and foremost in my mind. And that dictates what I do and how I approach things during the day. What am I going to do to put the organization first? You have to be honest. That's the number, in my humble opinion, that's the number one thing in being a good leader. No matter what position you're in, you have to be honest. People will not follow someone that they believe is dishonest. So you have to say what you mean and mean what you say. As the chief operating officer, you are responsible for being the person that's the attention to detail man, right? Your job, I know that there's a plaque that you can buy that says, don't sweat the small stuff. I think as the chief operating officer, all you do is sweat the small stuff, right? You are responsible for the details. You have to be detail oriented. Why? Because when you focus on the details, it allows the president of the organization to focus on the big picture, right? To figure out where do we want to go? Where do we want to take this chapter? They can set the vision. I'm saying that you don't participate in helping set the vision. You should. If the president's doing his job and has put together a good team, you will participate in that. But you concentrating on the details gives the president the opportunity to concentrate on the big picture and not get bogged down in the details. And then the last thing I would say is you need to understand your own limitations and don't be afraid to deliver bad news. And so I'll give you another real world example. When I started at Donohue Brown, they had a woman who had the title of office administrator. She still has the title of office administrator. She's still there. And the longer I was with the firm, the more I started doing things that our office administrator had done in the past. So in December of last year, the management committee, the firm is technically run by a 3-person management committee. There's a managing partner and then 2 other partners, and I report to them. I have autonomy to do a lot of things in the firm, but they have the ultimate decision. So for example, I can't, if it's over $500, I can't buy something that costs more than $500 without running it by the management committee. And there are other things that I wouldn't do without running it by the management committee, because I just think it's right for me to get them, for them to say, yes, we think that's the right thing to do. We agree with your plan. We've bought into it. Go ahead and do it. So the management committee came to me. I meet with them probably every other week. And in December, they came to me and said, look, we've really been thinking long and hard about this, and we think that we should get rid of the office administrator. We don't think we need both a chief operating officer and an office administrator. So we'd like you to basically tell us, what are all the things that Susie does? I said, well, that's going to be interesting because I don't do what she does. So I'm going to have to try and figure out what she does and do it without her knowing, right? Because I can't just ask her, hey, Susie, what do you do on a daily basis? Because then she'll be like, why are you asking what I do? She's going to figure out that they want to get rid of her. So they said, you sit down and figure out what it is that she does, and then figure out which additional tasks you can take on, and what you think we could give to someone else in the firm. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and I came up with a list and I sent it to them, and then I had a long talk with them, and they said, okay, we're going to give you about 80% of her job, and the other 20% you can figure out who else we can give that to, and we're going to get rid of her at the end of January. So we'll get through the holidays, and then probably the last week in January, we the four of us will sit down with her and we'll tell her that we're letting her go, and that you're going to take over her job. So at the beginning of January, through a series of details that I will not bore you with, I spent an awful lot of time with Susie and really, really got to understand what it is that she did. And I quickly realized two things. One of the things I realized was she has a set of skills that I do not have and never will have. So I realized very quickly the firm has an operating system. It's designed for law firms, so it won't mean, the name of it won't mean anything to anybody on the call other than me, probably. Maybe Steve. Steve might be familiar with it. It's called Perfect Law, which is the name of the system. And Susie knows Perfect Law backwards and forwards. She can get into it and she can run reports. She can figure out any detail that you want, anything you need. You ask her for a document, she can find it. I can't do that. I can get into Perfect Law. I can do a conflict search. I can save a document, and that's about the extent of my skill set. So I started thinking, I will not be able to deliver the training that our assistants need on Perfect Law the way that Susie can. And she is a whiz with the accounting department. And even though I'm responsible for the accounting department, she really knows the systems. And that's not something that I know, and not something that I'm particularly good at. So the first couple of weeks of January, I realized very quickly that it was going to be a very bad idea to get rid of Susie. But I also knew that the management committee was dead set on doing so. They just did not want to keep her around. So I last week made a very difficult call to the managing partner, and I said, Karen, I need to talk to you about something I've been thinking about for a while. And she said, okay, what is it? And so I said, look, I know that you guys want to get rid of Susie, but in my humble opinion, that would be a very, very bad mistake. Getting rid of her will be an extreme disservice to the firm. And she said, why do you say that? So I explained everything to her, and she said, you know what? I'm very glad that you told me that. She said, I respect your opinion. I believe that you are correct. We will have to, figure out how to reconfigure her job. We'll probably still give you some additional things to do. We'll probably wind up paying her less, but we will not get rid of her. She said, now call the other two members of the management committee and tell them what you just told me. So I made two more phone calls, and they said the same thing. They said, we appreciate the fact that you had the gumption to tell us that this is something that we needed to do. That you didn't just let this go ahead and let us fire her, and then 2 weeks after that realize, oh my God, this was a horrific mistake. So that's why I'm saying you have to understand your own limitations. And I knew what mine were. I knew that there were just certain things no matter how much time I put into it, I would not be able to do as effectively. And although I knew it was really, really bad news, it was not something they wanted to hear, I made the phone call anyway, because I had to tell them, in the best interest, going back to that point, put the organization first, in the best interest of the firm, do not get rid of her. So the plan is now to keep her, to kind of rearrange her job a little bit, probably talk to her about a reduction in her salary, commensurate with taking some things off her plate, but she will continue to work for us, and I think we averted a major crisis. So that's my I think I'm probably at my 20 minutes, Ben, or pretty darn close. So I
Doing
will be
great.
quiet now unless anybody wants to ask me a question.
All right. So if anybody has any questions, please throw them in the chat, and then we'll make this more of a conversation. Brad, since we have you here, I'll go off track a little and just say, as a national board member, what have you seen in the last few years, the changes that have come with with SIGEP, and what have you seen in terms of the changes in the last few years, as well as what are you most excited about the future in the next few years of SIGEP? Since we have a national board member here, I think that's a good place to start. And then we'll let some of the vice presidents of programming throw any of the questions they have about your professional experience and some of the things that you talked about into the chat.
And you couldn't have given me a heads up, Ben, that maybe when we talked last week, hey, I'm gonna ask you this question, be ready to answer it.
I think this is more fun. Prove that you know a thing or two about SIGEP.
So I think the big changes, right? The thing that's really changed is the votes that we've taken at the last couple of conclaves. One, to make every chapter a balanced man chapter. The big vote, obviously, to move to substance free. It has had a huge impact in our ability, I think, to deliver a better experience than we had in the past. It has certainly had a huge impact on our bottom line, right? We haven't had any claims in the last couple of years, which tells me that we're doing something right. We have, I think, have started to have chapters understand the importance of year-round recruitment and getting, having people in the pipeline 365 days a year instead of just, 10 days during rush or 2 weeks during rush. And that, I think, has been a big shift for us. What am I excited about going forward? I think that we are, I think that we're trying to figure out ways, and I think COVID has helped us do this, and maybe one of the only benefits of this whole pandemic. I think that we're figuring out ways to more effectively deliver our programming to a lot more people and open up that opportunity in ways that we couldn't before. Right. So we did Ruck virtually, and I, having done both, right, I facilitated at Ruck in person for 8 years. I did the virtual Ruck. There's no question that the in-person Ruck is a better product, right? It's just, there's something about being together, living together for those 5 days and sharing that experience. However, when we do it in person, there's a finite number of people that we can involve in that program. Now we know that we have the platform to be able to deliver that content to hundreds of people as opposed to 100 people. That, I think, is exciting. And being able to deliver our programs, which I think are the best in the fraternity world, to a lot broader audience is probably the one good thing that has come out of this whole COVID experience. I'm also, we have a new strategic plan that we've rolled out, which obviously, a strategic plan is designed to take you several years into the future. So it's going to take us a while to achieve what's in that plan. But I'm probably more excited about this strategic plan than any of the others that we've had. And some of the things that we've recognized we have to do a good job with. Mental health is one of those issues. We have a task force that's looking into that and making suggestions about how we need to address mental health issues, what we can do to help people in our chapters deal with mental health issues. That's a big deal. It's a huge deal. And that's just one small part of the strategic plan, but it's something that we finally recognized and said, look, let's build it into the plan. And let's make sure it's something that we work on. So there's a lot of exciting things happening. I'll stop now.
I appreciate that. And I particularly agree with what you mentioned about Ruck. And I think it's important for vice presidents of programming to know that too. I don't think anybody would say that they're going to be able to do a virtual program that will be as effective or as fun as some of the things that you could do when all your brothers could get together in person. But the reality is it's better than nothing. And we can reach more people, especially at a time like this when we do it virtually. So thanks for mentioning that. And we have some questions specifically about their roles. One comes from Riley at Utah State, particularly asking about How do you deal with the slow bureaucracy of universities? So, for the vice president of programming, they probably deal with a lot of paperwork and a lot of policies and expectations from their university. You probably have a ton of experience working through bureaucracy in your role and your time as a lawyer. What's your advice? How can you remain effective and action oriented when you have to jump through hoops?
I think you have to be persistent, right? You have to constantly follow up. I'm a big believer in building relationships. So if you can build a relationship with your, if the school is small enough, with your dean of students, or if it's a large university, with whoever's responsible for overseeing the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life, or whatever the title may happen to be, really get to know that person. And I find that the personal relationships really grease the skids, right? You can get things done if people know who you are, and they like you and they want to help you. You can get a lot more accomplished than if you're just an anonymous name, right? So take some time, cultivate relationships with the folks that you need to get approval from, and stay diligent, right? You have to keep after it. And bureaucracy is everywhere. I wish I could tell you, you guys will graduate and you'll never have to deal with bureaucracy again, and that would just be a lie. It's everywhere, and I have found that what you really need to do is just stay persistent. And make sure that you, if you can do it up here, and I'll be the first to admit, I'm not a big calendar person. I have always kept my calendar in my head. It's failed me a few times, not many, but I have an ability to be able to remind myself, okay, I got to contact the IRS again, which is something that I've been doing with some frequency. I've been trying to clean up a mess that occurred several years before I started Donohue Brown. To talk about bureaucracy, there's no bigger bureaucracy than the IRS. And it has been literally, I will contact the Kansas City field office every other week just to try and get this issue resolved. And I just know that on Thursdays I have to make a call. Tomorrow's my IRS day. I have to make a call. And I have, to the extent that you can befriend an IRS agent. I befriended one in Kansas City. And I've gotten a lot farther now that I know her and she knows me. She
Mhm.
knows that I'm going to call her on Thursdays and see if we can't get this issue resolved. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, great point. Relationships will lead to results in no matter what you are doing. Um, One of the things that vice presidents of programming spend their time doing is planning events and trying to get brothers to attend those events and those programs. So Braden at Arkansas Epsilon asks, what is the best way to keep their members engaged and committed to doing events? Steve Channels, one of our facilitators, has also seen this with vice presidents of programming about trying to gain chapter buy-in into these things. What would be your advice about getting buy-in and having people show up to the things that all of our brothers invest their time into?
I think one of the things that you should try, or you have to try, is variety, right? Don't keep offering the same activities in the same uh, order semester in and semester out, because people will be like, well, we already did that. And I'll tell you from my personal experience, from my home chapter, we did, this was a long time ago, guys. So this is back, before the Balanced Man program, and when it was just Rush. There was no 365-day recruitment, and there was no Balanced Man scholarship or anything like that. It was just when we did for 4 straight years, we did the same events every single Rush, the same thing, and we couldn't get people to come. Not only did we not get potential new members to come. We couldn't get brothers in the chapter to come because they're like, we've already done that. How many times can we play mini golf through the house? Right. So you need to come up with new ideas, different ideas. Make sure that you build variety into the programming. I'm a firm believer in asking your members, what do they want to do? What do they want? What do they want to be part of the programming? If you ask them, take a poll of the members and say, hey, it doesn't have to be formal, it can be informal. Just talk to 10 people in the chapter and say, what would you like to see us do as part of our programming? And if 7 guys out of the 10 say, you know what, we'd really be interested in a program about finances, or a program about what should you think about if you're going to buy a house, things that we'll need to know that they don't teach you in school when you get out of college. And if 7 of the 10 people say the same thing, then that should be one of the programs that you do, right? They're telling you, this is what we're interested in, this is what we'd like to see us do. Then make sure you try and work that in.
And it's certainly the same thing about building relationships, just like we talked about in the bureaucracy question, building relationships with your brothers and reaching out to them individually to say, what would you like to see? And hey, are you showing up to this thing? Lower all the barriers to entry, make it interesting, exciting, and engaging, and then follow up with people to make sure that they attend. So last question, Brad, and then the vice presidents of programming are all going to go into their breakout rooms to engage with one another and a volunteer facilitator. It comes from both Dallin from Wagama at Eastern Washington and Ulysses from John Carroll. They really want to know what your perspective is on the fact that their chapter experience is virtual. Obviously, you didn't experience a virtual chapter experience in your day, but what would be your advice to these vice presidents of programming about the fact that they are taking on a role that only in the last 9 months has required virtual events? How do they make the most out of this situation that they're facing right now?
So I think that they probably I think a big part of it is staying in touch with each other, right? And I can tell you from our firm perspective, that's one of the things that we have been very conscious of, is making sure that we check in. I have a check-in with the associates once a week, so that and it's not, there's no formal agenda. I just check in with them, ask them if they have any questions, if there's anything that they want to talk about. Do they have any questions about, when we might be going back to the office? When we do that, what's it going to look like? Just so that they're not out there by themselves, right? That they're 17 islands by themselves with no connection to anybody else. And then we get the entire firm together on occasion, same thing, to just so that we can maintain that connection with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think, try and find things activity wise, try and find things that you can do in the Zoom environment, right? In this pandemic world where we're all, in our own little bubble and not able to see each other in person. There's all kinds of programs that I've seen. There's one that my wife and I use. We have a group of 6 couples, and we get together once a month, and everyone is responsible for a program, doing some activity that the group does. So there's an app called Psych. And if you download it on your phone, there's all different categories, and you can basically, the object of the game is to try and psych out the other people who are playing. So it'll give you a question, and it'll tell you to finish the question, to make up an answer. And the goal is for you to come up with something that you think other people will think is the real answer. And then scores everybody. You keep points, and the first person that gets to 20 points wins the game. It's a hilarious game. It's funny to play. It keeps everybody engaged. It doesn't cost anything, and so sometimes we do that. One of the folks went around to everybody's house, gave everybody a dry erase board, a little dry erase board with a marker and an eraser, and then when we all zoomed in, they basically did a Jeopardy game, and everybody used the whiteboard, write down their answers, and then everybody had to, each couple had to show their answer, and they figured out who won, and then they went around the next day and they gave prizes to everybody. They dropped them off their house. Nobody saw anybody, but it's just thinking of things like that outside of, getting outside of just, oh, well, let's just get together and look at each other and Zoom. I know the firm has used, there's a virtual tic-tac-toe game. So you can, a virtual bingo game. So our administrator made a bingo game using facts about Donohue Brown. So we played that with the staff. Everybody got, and the program itself, again, it's free. Program generates a random bingo card for everyone who plays. And you can press, on the screen, and you got that one. And so she asked all these questions about Donohue Brown. And then the first person that got bingo, they got a $20 gift card, and then we kept playing, and the next person that got bingo got a $15 gift card. But it's things like that, trying to find activities like that can keep you guys connected in this virtual world. That's something different than just sitting together and looking at each other or talking to each other on Zoom. Not that that's not important, because I think it is, but try and find some other things, other activities that you can work into it that will allow people to stay engaged and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, Brad, it's a balancing act between understanding that we will get back to a time where we can spend time together again. We will, but also we can't just wait and do nothing until then.
Correct.
Right. So it's knowing that it's not going to be the same, but we have an opportunity to still get to know each other more, to still have fun with one another, to make the most out of this time. So, Brad, thank you for helping our vice presidents of programming see that, to understand their role as chief operating officer, just as yourself. And thank you for all you do for SIGEP. It's been great to have you on with us tonight.
Thanks, Ben. It's been great to be here.